Are you getting ready to sell a property in Long Beach or any of the surrounding areas? I'm gonna try and save you a potential headache and pitfall, so keep watching. The inspection is usually the point where unexpected surprises arise, and it catches a lot of buyers and homeowners off guard. And just so we're on the same page, I'm referring to the buyer's inspection once you're in escrow. After you're under contract and escrow has opened, the buyer will schedule their own inspector to go through the home and evaluate all of the major systems. That report is something buyers rely on to determine the condition of the home that they're buying. And oftentimes it can be the basis for repair requests and/or concessions towards repairs. Not always, but it's common, especially in this market that we're currently in. Now, it's worth mentioning that while the California residential purchase contract clearly states that buyers are purchasing the home in its present physical as-is condition, and that sellers in California are not required to make any repairs, I like to prepare homeowners to be ready for that request regardless. Most homeowners put all their focus on what it's going to take to get an offer, but honestly, the inspection is where the real negotiating can happen. Sometimes the requests are small, sometimes they're much larger than expected. Either way, this is usually the moment where people get really stressed. Let me give you a general example. I had a property listed in the Bixby Knolls area this past year. It was a great home, very well maintained. However, we knew there were issues with the pool and the roof. We listed it and priced it accordingly, had strong interest, disclosed the issues, and included the reports that we had for both of those areas. So the buyer knew up front what they were buying because my client was moving out of the area and didn't have the funds to make these repairs. Even with all of that, we went under contract quickly and negotiated an as-is sale for our homeowner. Everything was going smoothly so far, right? Buyers knew what they were signing up for, we thought. Well, when the buyer's inspection report came back, there were the items that we had initially disclosed that showed up in the report, along with something pretty significant that we were not aware of. Most of what was in the report was nothing unusual at all for a home from this era, including the roof and the pool issues. However, what we weren't prepared for was that the inspector discovered significant defects in the foundation. It was basically crumbling. I prepared my seller to be ready for a hefty request because while they knew they were dealing with roof and pool issues, they hadn't signed up for the foundation problems that came up. The reality is that the buyers are going to ask for repairs or concessions, especially when it involves safety and livability issues. When the buyer submitted their repair request, the total amount they asked for was over $70,000. The buyer had a structural engineer give them a quote, but now they were also asking for the credit to include the roof and pool repairs that they had already agreed to take on. They were spooked. When people are about to make a major purchase, small issues can feel big and big issues can seem terrifying. This is where inspection reports create leverage, but they can also tear the deal apart if not handled properly, and where an experienced local listing agent becomes really important. Once those requests come in, you want someone who can help you understand what's normal, what's fair, and what's being interpreted through stress, emotions, or even fear. A good agent can explain which items genuinely matter, which requests are inflated, and how to respond properly to prevent the deal from blowing up. Sometimes the best move is to accept a request if it's reasonable and doable to get the buyer to remove their contingencies and move forward with the sale. Other times, it's better to counter with a more accurate, experience-based perspective on what the repair actually costs or how common that issue is for a home in your area. Having someone who knows our housing stock, understands how buyers typically react, and can guide you through that back and forth makes the negotiation stage a lot smoother and a lot less stressful. Mind you, there were a lot of emotions flying from both sides over this issue. My sellers were digging their heels in at one point, insisting they weren't going to do anything. I had to let them cool down, then explain that we can negotiate with the buyer we have and that we should really try to start there. See, a lot of buyers would have bounced by now. This was a lot to take on. Between the roof, the pool, and now the foundation, that's a lot. I also reminded the sellers that they would now have to disclose this material defect to the next buyer, along with the roof, the pool issues, and now a full inspection report. In this scenario, I suggested to my sellers to get their own estimate for the foundation repair work that was needed, which we did. From there, we put together a response back to the buyer with a counteroffer for a credit towards the repairs for the foundation that was reasonable, and we included the estimate that we obtained and reminded them that this was intended to be an as-is sale and that the seller wasn't going to be offering an additional credit for the pool and roof because that was already accounted for in the price. By doing this, it showed the buyer that the seller was really willing to work with them. The buyer accepted the lower credit and we finally closed. Now, this is not the norm. This was an isolated situation that could have been disastrous with a less experienced agent on the listing side. This is a great example of why deals can fall apart during the inspection process. What I recommend is talking with your listing agent about what typically comes up on an inspection report here in Long Beach or whatever city you're in, or in your particular area of Long Beach, because some areas the homes are much older, and older homes in different parts of the city tend to have their own deficits and patterns. And someone who understands those nuances can really help you get ahead of the predictable stuff so it doesn't turn into a big surprise later on. In certain parts of the city, foundation issues are not uncommon. Old electrical panels that have been recalled or knob and tube wiring can also come up, as well as some plumbing issues. I talked to every single one of our sellers about this because understanding the likely inspection items or issues ahead of time often leads to a cleaner negotiation once you're in escrow. Another thing I recommend is to have a seller inspection prior to putting your home on the market. This way, you can get ahead of the possible pitfalls and surprises. Buyers love this too because they can see what they're buying ahead of time. Well, I hope this was helpful. If you are thinking about selling in the months to come, please reach out. We'd love to help. Bye for now.